Sorry for the slight delay. I'd like to call the meeting to order. It is, where's it? What time is it?
9:07.
Okay, it's 9:07 and we'll take roll. Rod?
Rod Diaz, otolaryngologist, public board member.
Christy Cooper, audiologist, board member.
Karen Chang, public member. Marcia Raggio, audiologist, board member.
Dee Parker, speech language pathologist, board chair.
Amnon Shalev, hearing and dispenser, board member.
Deborah Snow, public member, board member.
Okay. We do have a quorum, and at this time, I would like to turn this over to our ALJ.
Good morning. My name is Jalan Zhang. I am the administrative law judge who's been assigned to hear the case regarding the reinstatement petition of Mary Sinclair Van Sicklen. We will be on the record on the matter of the petition for reinstatement of Mary Sinclair Van Sicklen. Agency case number is 11-2018-044. OH case number is 2019-03-0757. Today is April 12th, 2019. Again, my name is Jalan Zhang. I am the administrative law judge from the Office of Administrative Hearings, assigned to sit with the Speech Language Pathology and Audiology Examining Committee, which is convened here today to hear this petition. May I have your appearance, please, counsel?
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Vladimir Shalkovich, and I'm the Attorney General. I'm here representing the public interest under Oregon 5.
Okay. Ms. Van Sicklen, if you can state your full name for the record and spell it.
Okay, it's actually Mary Sinclair. Van Sicklen has been dropped, but I don't know if that matters.
That's the case name that I have been given, but if you prefer to, prefer to go over.
It doesn't really matter to me. I didn't know if it was something legal that was remanded.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
So it's Mary Sinclair, S-I-N-C-L-A-I-R, Van Sicklen, capital V-A-N, capital S-I-C-K-L-E-N.
Okay. You are representing yourself today, so what I'm going to do is explain some procedures and also some ground rules. We have a court reporter present, so please make sure that you are audible and speak slowly, and also try not to speak over anyone. If there is a question being asked, please verbalize all of your answers, meaning there's do not use only say yes or no, and no using of gestures. Again, this is for the benefit of our court reporter who's capturing everything, transcribing everything that you're saying. She cannot capture anything other than verbalized statements. Okay? So in terms of the procedure for today, the burden of proof is on you to prove that you are entitled to the reinstatement. The Deputy AG will first offer the jurisdictional documents, and that's to establish the basis for me to hear your case today. And then he is going to outline the background of the case. And I also see that you have some additional documents that you plan to submit in addition to the jurisdictional documents from...
Recommendations is what they are.
Yes, that's fine. And we will be entering that into the record as well.
Okay.
Assuming there's no objection from the Deputy AG. Okay? Okay, so you are then, after... I'm just going to give... I just want to know for the record that we have a technician who is wiring some microphones, so I'm just going to give him some time to do that.
Thank you. Sorry, guys. Best we're going to get on the fly.
Okay. All right. Okay. After the deputy agent makes his background statement, you will make your presentation to the board. and you can call witnesses, and obviously you also have some additional documents. Anytime that you are testifying, the other party has the right to object. If there is an objection being made, just stop, let me make the ruling, and then you can go forward.
Okay.
Okay, and then after after your presentation, the Deputy AG will have some questions for you, and then after that, the board will have some questions for you as well. And then we will go around the board, and I will ask each board member to pose any questions that they have for you. Okay, do you have any questions so far?
Not really, no.
Okay, all right. You also have the right to raise any legal objections to any of the questions being asked. But just keep in mind that if you do raise an objection, you need to state the basis, and then I will make the ruling, and then you can go forward.
Okay.
Okay? After your petition has been heard, the board will meet in closed session for deliberations. The decision will not be announced today, but a written decision will be mailed to you as soon as possible, usually within a couple of weeks. Okay? Any questions?
I wasn't told that I was to bring something to be to deliver as a opening. I thought it was the narrative. Is that, am I wrong on that?
Well, you can't, what you're doing is just making a presentation of the
Okay.
evidence. So you can, you're essentially testifying on your own behalf. What I will do is swear you in as a witness, and you can describe in your own words why you are entitled to the reinstatement.
Okay.
And you can describe in your own words what each of the documents that you're submitting really means and what it signifies for a case.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So you don't necessarily have to have a narrative, but again, every petitioner usually testifies on their own behalf.
Okay.
Okay? Do you have any character witnesses?
No.
Okay.
I just have the recommendations, yeah.
That's fine. Okay. All right. So with that, we will start with Mr. Shalkovich.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Your Honor. To start out with, in front of you, you will see there is a 3-ring binder. I believe it has been previously provided to you. The very first page of that is a table of contents that describes what documents are and behind what tab they are. You'll also notice that most of the pages have date stamps on them at the bottom center. There is in the body of the documents. So as we discussed, we could refer to a tab by the number, or we could refer to a page, and those are the page numbers that we are referring to. And so with that, Your Honor, I would like to introduce, I first identify the default decision and order together with the accusation that led to the license revocation of Miss Mary Sinclair.
Okay. So Exhibit 1 has been,
And I would like to admit it for jurisdictional purposes as well as for evidentiary purposes.
okay. So Exhibit 1 has been marked for identification. Go ahead, Mr.
I'd like to
Shalkovich.
admit it for
Okay.
evidentiary purposes.
Ms. Van Sicklen, do you have any objections to Exhibit 1 being admitted for jurisdictional purposes and for evidentiary purposes?
Not at all.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Shalkovich.
Thank you, Your Honor. Behind tab 2 is a certificate of licensure. It was prepared by the executive director of the board under Business and Professions Code Section 162. I'd like to admit it for all purposes.
Okay, so Exhibit 2 has been marked for identification. Any objections? Ms.
No.
I'm sorry, should I refer to you as Van Sicklen or Sinclair?
I think Sinclair is better.
Okay, all right,
Uh-huh.
I'll refer to you as Sinclair.
As an aside, Your Honor, Ms. Sinclair has submitted an additional exhibit that isn't in the books, and I've distributed it previously.
Okay.
Page 3 of that exhibit is an ex parte application for restoration of former name after entry of judgment and order. It indicates that Ms. Sinclair's name currently is Mary Jane Sinclair.
All right, thank
So
you.
let's refer to her. And while we're at it, I'd like to mark Exhibit 26 and add it to the jurisdictional documents at this time as a portion of Ms. Sinclair's petition.
Okay. All right, so, I'm just trying to clarify, Mr. Shalkovich, you are submitting the additional documents that you have distributed this morning collectively as Exhibit 26?
That's correct, Your Honor. These are documents that Ms. Sinclair sent to me as a supplement to her petition. So at this time, I'd like to mark it and introduce it for jurisdictional purposes as Exhibit 26.
Okay, all right. It looks like these are all character reference letters, is that correct?
Mostly, yes.
All right. So I'm going to identify them as character reference letters. And marking this packet for identification as Exhibit 26. All right, so Exhibit 26 has been marked for identification.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, returning to the front of the book, Exhibit 3 is a notice of hearing here today. I see that Ms. Sinclair is present. Would like to mark and introduce it as evidence that the board complied with the notice requirements.
Okay, so that's going to be for jurisdictional purposes, is that
Correct.
correct? Okay. All right, so any objections to Exhibit 3 for jurisdictional purposes?
No.
Okay. Maybe we can speed this along. Ms. Sinclair, have you reviewed all the documents that's in the
Yes.
exhibit
we
packet?
I went over them, yeah.
Okay, do you
Yes.
have any objections to the admission of these documents into the evidence?
No.
All right, okay, so what I'm going to do is admit, given that I have a stipulation from petitioner, I will admit all the documents except the Exhibit 3 and 4, which are the notice of hearing for Exhibit 3 and petition for reinstatement, which is Exhibit 4, for jurisdictional purposes. All other documents, and those are Exhibits 1 and 2, and then 5 through 26 are admitted for all purposes. Is that okay, Mr. Shalkovich?
I have no objection to that, Your Honor. That's
Okay.
fine.
Well, those are your exhibits.
Well, not necessarily. Some of these are here for Ms. Van Sicklen's because they're part of her petition.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, so given that I have a stipulation between the parties, then all documents are admitted into evidence pursuant to my prior ruling. Go ahead.
All right, thank you, Your Honor. As in a way of introduction, this is a case where Ms. Sinclair is looking to reinstate her license. Her license was revoked as a part of a default back in 2005. And the reason for that default was an accusation, which is a portion of Exhibit 1, and it begins on Bates stamp page 5. It lists 4 DUI convictions as the reason for Ms. Sinclair's license revocation. It is notable that the last one of those, the one that brought about the board's action to revoke her license, was a felony because it constituted not only a DUI in that instance, it also constituted a DUI with 4 priors, or 3 priors, numerous priors. Anyway, after that, Ms. Sinclair suffered several other setbacks involving DUIs during the period of time when her license was revoked. The last one, thankfully, was in 2011. It has been some time since the last DUI. However, when Ms. Sinclair last submitted her petition in 2018, from that petition became apparent that she was in fact practicing speech therapy without a license. And the board investigated that matter. They interviewed Ms. Sinclair, and as a result, they issued her a citation and fine, which she paid recently. And so all of the outstanding issues with the board have been resolved. However, that is a recent event that the board discovered, continuing until approximately 2017. So with that background, it is up to Ms. Sinclair to make a presentation to you to show you that she's entitled, or that she can meet the burden of proof, to show you that she's ready to have her license reinstated. And I would like to hear it as well. So I will stop now and let her take over.
Okay. So, Ms. Sinclair, it is your turn to present your side of the case. If you can stand up, I'm going to swear you in as a witness. So that
Okay.
every statement that you make will be something that we can take into the evidence, okay? Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this proceeding shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, please be seated. Okay, so Ms. Sinclair, just as another reminder, you do have, we do have the court reporter present. You don't have an attorney to conduct a examination of you. So when people are testifying in a narrative format, there tends to be a tendency to speed up. Just be aware of the speed because again, we have a court reporter who's transcribing everything.
Okay.
Okay? All right, so again, in terms of the content that we're looking for, if you could describe what occurred, what led to your DUIs, and what you have done since that time to rehabilitate yourself in terms of any therapy you received, in terms of any treatments at residential or non-residential facilities, any participation in Alcoholics Anonymous, any participation in civic activities or community activities. In addition, you need to address your citation for practicing without a license, the facts and circumstances surrounding that. And Mr. Shalkovich stated that you have paid the fine, but again, tell us what has happened since that time in terms of any mitigation or rehabilitation evidence.
Okay.
Any questions about what you
No.
need to state? Okay, go ahead, Mrs. Sinclair.
Okay, well, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Mary Sinclair, as you know. Back in the day, I went to University of Pacific and got my master's degree and bachelor's degree in communicative disorders. And from there, I did my clinical fellowship year at Valley Children's Hospital in Fresno, California. And from there, I've done just about everything. I've worked in the public schools, I've worked in convalescent hospitals, acute hospitals, just about anything, private practice, everything. And I loved every minute of it. I just, it's a part of me. And when this happened and it was taken away, I was devastated. I didn't know what to do. It was like my right arm was cut off. So, but understandably, I went on and I needed to find what was causing the drinking, and that is just a symptom, and I had to find out what the conditions were underlying. And I did go to several programs. I went to the Betty Ford Center. I went to St. Helena. I did one in Stockton called New Directions. And I was a member of, I went to my first Alcoholics meeting, and my two sons were babies, so that they're 33 and 34 now. So I've been going ever since then. But for somehow, they say it takes what it takes, and nobody can really tell. You have to completely believe in this program. And I thought I was doing it, but I wasn't, and I kept trying, though. They would say, keep coming back, don't give up, It works if you work it. There are all these sayings that kept me going back to it. So I still am a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I go between 5 and 7 times a week at a 7 a.m. meeting in the desert, in Palm Desert. So, and I've been to the same place every single time. And so I know the people, and it's been a great connection. And Vladimir was right. On 5/18/11 was my last DUI. And I had someone drive me over to a place where I was volunteering, and I was parked in a car. So anyway, the long and the short of it, I wasn't driving. I had taken care of that part of it, but unfortunately I had been drinking the night before. So I was, they took the test and all, but I fought it because I wasn't driving. And I went for a year and a half fighting that case every 2 weeks. And finally, the psychiatrist that I was going to said I had a dual diagnosis, and it was alcoholism and mental illness. And so they had a mental health court that was a year-long program. And I asked for it, and I said, I really think this is something that I could benefit from, and I need to look into this more. So I did, and I did very well in that program. I have the judge wrote me a nice note and told me how well I did, and probation came, and I mean, I really it was starting to click, and the drinking started just to taper off, and I continued to go to the meetings. So I do see a psychiatrist. I am on medication, and it takes a minute to get that medication, so that you're not dizzy or you're not sick at your stomach. And it really took a good 2 years to get the right dosage and all that. So I have that pieces together with the AA, and I feel really strong about it. And in a month, I will have 8 years, which is a miracle. So I'm so grateful for it. I have worked hard for it, but there was some intervention that happened, and I was lucky to be one of them that received it. So that's those two pieces. The piece about in 2010, I came out to the desert because my folks were 85 and they were ailing health-wise, and everybody else had children, and the 4 other 3 brothers and sisters, and mine were grown. So I decided I was going to come down and help them out, and I ended up being there for 6 years. And first couple of years were fine, but then, they were 91 and 92 and needing more care, and so it became really almost a full-time job. They remained at home until my dad at the very end, and Mom stayed till the very end. But in the beginning of those years, they were really fine. They were still driving and all, and I kind of wanted to do something because I didn't know anybody in the desert, and I wanted to help somewhere. I knew I could do something. So the Stroke Center had an article in the paper. This is how it started, and I'll try to be short on this. But it was describing the speech therapist who maybe many of you know. She's been big in Cascia forever. And she retired, and she went out to volunteer, and she had been there 10 years. At the end, it was 10 years. So I thought, well, gosh, that's kind of interesting. I wonder what they do there. So I went and I checked it out and met with the lady and the head, and I also met with this nice woman. And I told them what I was looking for was just to help, and maybe, I could do anything you wanted me to do. And they said, well, we seem to be fine now, and please, we'll call you when something comes up. That happened. They called me and they said their volunteers were low, and could I come out and help? And I said, absolutely. So I did everything from mopping the floor to cutting the bagels to, I mean, I did push the wheelchairs and clean the thrift shop and all of that. But I also worked with some groups that was called speech therapy. But to really explain what this place was like, it was really more of a support system for stroke people. It was a bit of a daycare for adults. I don't want to go that far, but, they had speakers come in and they had lunch, but it was really a support group for people to be around other people with strokes. And we did some exercises like WH questions and, what would you do if, that kind of exercise, that kind of speech therapy. But it really wasn't speech therapy like any kind of a clinic. There was no pre and post testing. There was no writing of notes. There was nothing. It was more, so I just thought I was helping out. And I was a volunteer. There was no money exchanged. I was up front with the lady on the first time I met her and the second time I came in that I did not have a license. And she said, you don't need a license. So, at that point, there was no billing, there was no money ever exchanged. So I thought I was really being a helpful person, is really what I thought. However, in the way it's described in the website and all, they use those terms, speech therapists and physical therapists, but no one in that place is licensed, I'm telling you. And the physical therapist is a yoga instructor, and in the speech department, there were mechanics and architects, and one guy had AIDS and he wanted to give back, so he was a speech therapist. So that's what I guess I'm trying to explain, that it wasn't like I put my shingle out on the door and operated private practice without a license. I would never, ever do that. But it was something that I thought I could help in. And that's really in my heart of hearts what I thought of the place. So I remained there, and in fact, CASHA really gave us the program of the year. They came out because it was all done by volunteers, I believe, and that was an honor. So they did later hire a gal with a license. They changed the name to Neurovitality Center because they brought in MS patients and Parkinson's, and they were going to try to make it more than just stroke patients. And then she had a license and she could bill with those, that group. Some of them had just got the diagnosis, and that was fine. And then there was a rumor that they were going to bill what all these people that weren't licensed and not even background, but it really was just a rumor. The billing was really going to go for the other two. So, and I would never have had it happen if I even got close to it. So, that's my side of the stroke center of what I really thought it was. And let's see. So I do a lot of work with Alcoholics Anonymous. I have sponsored 2 people, which is a big thing, that you give back what they gave you. We have a lot of activities, but the main thing is to show up to help the person that has less years than you, and they were there for me, so I'm going to be there for them. So, and I'm trying to think what else. I feel like I feel great, is what I feel. I feel the medication is helping, the not drinking is helping. I feel good about myself. I know that those both are diseases and they aren't curable, but they are treatable. And if you do it every day, what you're supposed to do, take the medicine, go to a meeting, continue practicing those principles, I feel like I could be a member of society, and I would more than anything love to go back to my career. I'm getting a little up in age, so it probably would be a 5 to 7 year stint, but I'd like to end my career on a positive note, and so that's why I'm here today. Again, I have 2 wonderful boys. I can brag a little bit, I guess. I have 2 boys that are dentists. They live one lives in San Luis Obispo, one is in Stockton. And I just became a grandmother. So this is why I want to, and I'm gonna brag, so this is her. So I want to be up in that area, closer to them, and to enjoy my family now that my parents are gone. And the desert is really, I have friends now, but it's not my family. So that would be my goal, would be to be able to have a full-time job, not living in the same town. I don't think that's good for them either. So, but just close enough that I could visit and babysit and then again, practice what I went to school for, and I worked 28 years in the field, and I just absolutely loved every minute of it. So that's my goal, and that's why I'm here.
Okay, Ms. Sinclair, do you have anything further to add to your testimony?
I don't think so.
Okay, all
Yeah,
right.
I
In
think
that
that's
case,
it.
Cross-examination, Mr. Shalkovich.
All right. Why don't we turn to tab number 15? Ms. Sinclair, you've submitted a petition for reinstatement before, is that correct?
That is correct.
And that petition had to be withdrawn.
Right?
And then you submitted another petition just recently in 2018.
Right. Exactly.
And you were contacted by a board staffer by the name of Carla Newman, who asked you to provide a work history. Is that correct?
That's right.
And so now we're looking at page 113. If you look in the middle right here, Ms. Sinclair, if you look right here, that's page 113. That's behind tab 15.
I just want to know for the record that Mr. Shalkovich is identifying the base stamp that's in the middle of the page on the very bottom. So if you look, Ms. Sinclair, if you look at the page number, that's,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
there's a
That's-
base stamp, and
Gotcha.
indicates AGL 113.
I got you. Thank you.
Okay, and I want to direct your attention to how you described your position at Neurovitality Center in Palm Springs.
You want me to read it, or you want me to?
No, let me ask you a couple of questions
Okay.
about that. Now, the title was, that you described to have, is speech and language pathologist, is that correct?
That's what they called us, yes. But,
And in this email, obviously, that's what you called yourself as well.
am I on the right page? 113?
113.
Okay, and where do you see the, up in what?
So if you take a look, there are bullet points 1,
Okay.
2, and 3.
I got you.
And I'm looking at the second line below. the
Okay,
three. So that.
I see.
In this email, you refer to yourself as a speech language pathologist.
that's the department that I worked in, yes, as a volunteer.
And then jumping down a couple of lines, you described your duties. And one of them was to provide an assessment of the patient's speech and language abilities. Do speech language pathologists provide an assessment of the patient's speech and language abilities?
Well, what we did at this place was they had them in and talk to them. We didn't have any formal testing like a speech pathologist does. That was what I was kind of getting at. It was basically, is he understanding what I'm saying? Is he able to express his feelings and how many words? And to get kind of a level, that was all it was. It wasn't a pure, complete assessment.
Now, during your interview, you said that there was, at first, there was an intake interview the patients went through, is that right?
Right.
And then those patients, you had to interview them again in order to get a better
Right.
sense? Mm-hmm. So was your assessment more detailed than just an interview then?
Well, it was, I mean, the input person did physical therapy, hand coordination, I mean, it was all areas. And so in my area, it was to determine what level of speech and language this person had in a real, not a assessment test. We didn't even own one in the place.
Okay, let's look at the second sentence here. You said your next thing to do was to develop a treatment plan.
Okay, let's see. Well, the treatment plan was really, it was basically in our heads. We knew exactly what we were going to do. We had a book that we could pull. And it was nothing like what we do in a school system as a speech therapist. It was more of someone that had a background in speech and could maybe have a handle on something. Because the other workers really had no background.
And so as a trained speech language pathologist, you developed a treatment plan for these patients because others couldn't?
Well, yeah, the mechanic doesn't have much of a background, you know what I mean? He was a volunteer, nice to give his time, but I didn't do them for all patients. I only did them for people that came, they showed them my way, and then they muddled through with this, as best they could. So that's what I guess I'm trying to explain, that
Well, they didn't just muddle through, because if you take a look at the third sentence in your own description of your duties there, you said, see the patient twice a week in a group setting. Mm-hmm. Did you participate with these patients in a group setting twice a week?
Yeah, and we talked, and it was basically conversation. It was not, and trying to get conversations started, trying to see how they could interact with the other patients. It was more of a, like I say, it was almost like AA. People were coming to a room that had suffered the same thing and were talking about it and saying how they were getting through it, and so it was, I don't know how else to explain it. It was just not what the standard speech therapy, what you would ever do in any other setting.
I see. What about the portion of coordinating with caregivers to develop a home program to encourage carryover?
Okay, and that basically was the spouse or the caregiver or whoever brought them. We would go over what we talked about in the group, and we would say, if he isn't able to name something, what you might do is lead him into it. I don't know. I want a bottle of, if he can't say water, you would lead him into it. And that's a technique you can use in order to make the speech come more quickly.
Are these kind of home programs to encourage carryover a part of the practice of a speech language pathologist?
Yeah, it can be. I mean, I know in the school system, I had a booklet that went home at the end of every week, and they were to do the homework for speech, and that was what that was. That's the carryover program.
Okay. Just to wrap it up, can you understand why, in looking at this paragraph, the board concluded that you were practicing speech language pathology?
I can see by the wording, and that's what I was saying, as in the website, it looks like that's what we are, but that's not what happened in the rooms. It wasn't I hear what you're saying, that it sounds like the home program and all that I did as a full-blown speech therapist, but that's not what was happening in those rooms.
So the question I have for you then is this. Here you were communicating to the board about, what you did. And if you were not practicing speech language pathology, why phrase the description of your duties in this way that leads them to believe that you are?
Well, she just asked me what my duties were, and I guess I just wanted to give it a, you know, I mean, I can't just say we just hang around in a room and chat, you know? So I was just describing kind of how we handled it.
Well, you could tell her that you mop the floor, or that you push the wheelchairs around, or that you volunteer to clean up in the place like you told the board today. Why not put that information in?
Well, I believe she thought I was a speech therapist. She wanted to know what I did in that department. So that was my understanding.
Okay. Let's move on, and I apologize ahead of time, but let's see if we can get some clarity and history of the convictions and how they went about. I don't want to dwell on it.
Okay.
So let's just move along real quick. The first one that we are aware of took place in 1992, is that right? Do you remember what happened to bring about that arrest?
I was in process of a divorce. And it was, you know, I had young kids. It was a stressful time. We weren't getting along at home, and I was trying to make it, you know, working and paying the bills and all that stuff. So, you know, that's not an excuse. And it's I don't mean it like that. But that's what was going on at the time.
You've been a member of AA for quite a few years, and so talking about what brought about the issue is something that you've done before. So may I ask you, how did it all begin?
Well, that's a good question. It is a good question. Alcoholism is a genetic disease, first of all, and we have it rampant in my mom's side and my dad's side, with deaths and everything. So someone was going to get the card dealt to them, you know, and I didn't really start having a drinking problem until about I was 38. I never had a problem in college. I was completely devoted to this career I was going to. You know, I went to fraternity parties, but I didn't want to be crazy and, you know, it really wasn't a problem until I started having some problems at home and with that issue. That was the start of it. But once it gets started and you have that genetic disease, and you have to do something to stop it because it's going to continue. It's progressive. And that's why the AA is so important. You get reminded of it every single day.
Fair enough. So in 1992, what happened? Did you have an accident then?
No. I just decided that I'd go take a drive because I wanted to be away from the situation. And I was driving down the street and somebody pulled me over. I had no accidents on any DUIs. I mean, that hurt anybody or myself.
Okay, well, why don't we cover those? Then the next one that I'm aware of was in 1999. So that was about 2 years after the first one. And according to that, you suffered a conviction. Did you have any other priors besides the one in 1997?
Just the one you talked about in 1992, right?
Okay. What happened? How were you pulled over? Did you have an accident, or what were the circumstances of the 1997 event?
It's you know, this is hard to think back on exactly, but I know that all of them. I did have one accident that I hit a bench, a park bench. I did have that, and on another time I hit a part of a tree, but I never had any kind of injury. It was mostly just the way I was driving.
Weren't you injured in one of these?
Not really, no. I mean, I had like a scratch. I didn't even go to the hospital or anything.
Okay, fair enough. So then the next one After 1997, I'm aware of there was a conviction in 1999, 2 years
Okay.
later, and it was with 2 priors. Do you remember anything about that accident?
I can't,
Or rather, that arrest and conviction, that incident?
you know, I really can't remember that one. I know what the next one was when it was a felony. That one I do remember.
And that one happened in what year? Was 2004
Yeah.
the right time? What happened then?
That's when I hit the tree. And you were right, that after you've had 3 convictions, the 4th one becomes a felony, whether you've hurt anybody, yourself, or anybody else.
And that is also the conviction that led to your loss of the license? with the
That's
board.
right.
Were you sentenced to prison for that conviction?
Yes,
And were you incarcerated?
yes.
And for how long?
I went to on that one, they were going to put me at a year in jail. And what I would do 6 months, and then I would get out and do some programming in that amount of time. But somehow he let it go till 8 months, and then he said, well, we're going to have to let you out, and now it's too late, and maybe we ought to leave you there, and it was all a big decision. But he did let me go and was going to make me go to check in all these programs.
Who is he?
The judge.
Oh, okay.
And, but I didn't show up at one occasion, and that was it, and I was down. And I think I was there for 4 months.
So then, while you were on parole, so you were incarcerated for some time, is that correct?
Yes.
And then they let you out, and you were on parole?
Yeah,
Okay. And there was a parole violation in 2006?
right.
Okay. And what was the reason for the parole violation?
God, I'm trying to think. That was, I think what happened, I don't know. I think this is one that it wasn't a driving conviction, right? In 2006? You're
Well,
talking
I don't know. Do you
a
remember?
parole? No. I think what it was I had put a Christmas mug in a microwave cup and had gold in it, and it caught on fire. So the parole officer came over and told me that I basically was out of, you need to have something taught to you, and away I went.
For putting a cup in the
Well, and of
microwave?
course I was drinking too, yeah.
And was the condition of your parole to not drink?
Yes,
So you, did putting the cup in the microwave catch the house on fire?
well, it wasn't complete, it was just part of the kitchen.
And how did your parole officer find out about it? Was there firefighters called? Was it a big to-do?
Well, I do know there was smoke, and there was. I don't really know how she did. She just showed up at my house the next day.
Okay. And because of that parole violation, did you have to go back to jail
Yes.
for another 4 months? Okay. Now, your license was revoked in 2005, and it was by default. You didn't contest the revocation of your license. I was going to give you an opportunity to explain why that
Okay.
happened.
Well, what happened was, I was away at the time, and I have the ladies, they were delivering paper to, or the certified letter to my landlord, and I wasn't there.
And
So
her name was?
Marie.
Marie. And yours is Mary?
Yeah, so that's why I think everybody thought it was me. Let's see if I can find it. There it is. But after that, I didn't hear anything. So, I was away, and then I did get the final notice, and each time I did, I wrote a letter saying, here are the people that you could talk to. Because I thought they were still deciding. I just had no idea, and then I never heard any more from them.
Did you ever receive any communication from the board advising you that your license has been revoked?
No, I didn't get anything. All I got was that I mean, I was so confused, because I wasn't getting, it was 15 days I was supposed to ask for so that I could review it or whatever, but I wasn't around to, so the 15 days went and I didn't even know about it. So that's how I defaulted, was I didn't, and they wrote and said that I didn't follow the rules of the thing, but I had no idea what they were, so.
Okay, that was in 2005. How did you, you found out about the revocation because you could not renew your license after it expired, is that right?
Right.
So you found out then that you were working, where were you working at the time?
I was working for the company was O&R, but I had no idea. And they came to me and they said, you need to give me your life. I worked for them for 20 years on all occasions. And so I said, well, I haven't gotten it yet. I'll go home and call. And that's what I did. And they said, you don't have one. That's how I found out.
After you found out that you no longer had a license, did you do anything to try and get it back or to clarify that you never received the original document?
No, I was so upset about it. I just didn't know what to do. I was so confused with the whole system. I didn't know what to do. So I was told I could do it in another year, and I thought I'll just regroup and reapply.
Okay. And then after you regrouped, you submitted a petition for reinstatement in 2008, is that correct? And did you feel at that time that you were ready to have your license reinstated?
Not like I am now, is that what you mean? No, I just wanted it, is what I wanted.
Okay, so what made you feel that you were ready to have your license reinstated at that time?
Well, I was going to a program, I was listening to the doctor, I did everything, but looking back, I wasn't completely bought into the program. That's what I can tell you now, what I know now.
So the question I have for you, and that maybe the board would want to understand, how is it that they are to take the fact that you felt ready to apply for a license reinstatement in 2008? How is the situation different between now and then? This is your opportunity to tell them.
Right. And it is, well, first of all, I've been working with a sponsor. I have nearly 8 years of sobriety. That's a big deal.
That's true. And back then, how many years of sobriety did you have?
I can't remember, probably a year.
Now, some of the support letters that you submitted in your current petition, they were written back in 2006. Were they written in your support with regard to the parole violation, or was it with regard to your reinstatement petition last?
It was, they were writing a recommendation of who I was, and then I never worked after that because I didn't have a license. I became a caregiver and worked at the hometown buffet. So that's why I don't have anybody else to give a recommendation. My parents are gone. I guess my brothers could stand up for me. But so I don't have any working recommendations except to that point when I stopped.
All right, so let's take a look now at tab 20, and I just wanted to go through that. These are not all of the letters, but let's cover the one that's the ones that are behind that. The one from Vindium that we have here, that was it's actually dated September 22nd, but it doesn't say what year.
No.
When was this letter written?
I think it was the same time when I was gathering for the petition.
Page 130.
Exhibit 20.
Exhibit 20. So this letter was written to care of Tim Aspinwall, who was representing you at the time of your petition in 2008. Okay. So then 2 pages later, we have a letter from Alcohol and Drug Awareness Program. That one was dated 2008. Okay. That was in support of your last petition.
Right.
Right.
And that's the program I went to when I was right before.
Okay. Now, the next letter on page 134, that one was written on August 7th, 2006, is that correct? That was in support of your petition for reinstatement? Or was this written for the benefit of your evaluation for the parole violation?
No. Well, I mean, I may have given it to him, but this is a woman I worked with closely that was the resource specialist, and we did many IEPs together, and we worked well together.
Okay. Let's move on to the next one. This one was written by Ms. Caminero. This one was written in 2008, is that correct?
She was my sponsor at the time when I was in that program. She had 36 years of sobriety. She was a great lady. I talk to her still.
The next one, starting on page 137, that one is from Ms. Noble.
Yes,
And that one was written in September of 2006.
right. She,
Yes.
okay, she was, she had two great nieces that she took over. The parents were drug addicts, and so she was an older lady, definitely, but she took these two kids in, and I saw one of them, and she calls me all the time to tell me how grateful she is. This girl's a airline stewardess and flies to Japan all the time, and she just, and this is the one that wrote to my bosses. She gets a little typey, she sends them all over everywhere.
That's good. All right. So that's it for page 20. Now, Exhibit 20. Now, let's take a look at the documents that you sent me a few days ago, and they're marked as 26.
Okay,
Okay. And so the front is your cover note to me,
right,
and I received it. It just shows when it was received.
okay.
So, let's look through these. So, the first page, and I apologize that these are not numbered, but the first page is proof that you submitted for LifeScan.
Yes,
Okay. And the second page is clarification by your name.
yes,
Okay, very good. So then going on to the first letter that we have. And that was from Ms. Catterall.
right,
Okay, this letter was written in 2006 as well.
right. This person I've known since college. We were both speech therapists getting our degree, and I've kept up with her forever.
Where does she live?
She lives in San Diego. And in fact, the last paragraph, she talks about she believes in the board, and she's very active, Kathleen Catterall. I don't know if any of you know her. Great gal.
Okay. Now, going on to the next page, we have Vindham Engineering. That's just a copy of one of the exhibits in 20, right?
Yes, sorry about that.
And then the next one we have is that letter from Ms. Noble again.
Yes, it is.
That's a copy of the one we already have, right?
Yes,
Okay. And then this next page here, the one that looks like
Yes.
this.
oh, that's just, I gave her this so that they would write what at the bottom, that under perjury or whatever that is. This was just so that she could copy it, but instead she put it in She put it in her letter, but she
Oh,
also
I see.
signed it. You see
So
what
it
I?
was a part of her letter?
Right, right.
I understand.
Okay.
I was wondering why you
What
said
is that? Yeah, I know. And this is the letter, the next one is the
Okay,
letter.
so the next letter we have is the one from Patsy Noble. Here, it's immediately after that form. And it's dated December 12, 2000. So Ms. Noble wrote you 2 letters.
Right, this one was to the school district and to my immediate bosses.
And were you doing something along the lines of school district?
Yes, I was at Madison Elementary School, and these twins were there, and I saw this one, Heather.
Okay. This letter was written before you lost your license.
Yeah,
Okay, now, turning the page, there's the letter from Alcohol and Drug Awareness Program. And that's a copy of a document we already saw
okay,
as a part of 20.
okay.
All right, moving on. Here's a letter from the Stroke Recovery Center. It indicates that you completed 519 of the 600 so far in 2013 of your volunteer hours.
And that was court ordered, the 600, right?
Right, we'll go over that a little.
Okay.
further. So this one is new. It wasn't a part of Exhibit 20.
Okay,
All right. Then the next one is August 7, 2006 letter from Ms. Wyckoff.
that's this
It's a
one.
copy of
Yeah.
one you already submitted before. Is that
Okay,
correct?
yes,
Okay. Now, the next letter is from your son Charles.
yes,
This is a new document.
yes.
And obviously, it's from your son.
Yes,
And it's fair to say that he's supporting you in
Yes.
your endeavor here today?
yeah, wholeheartedly.
Okay, very good.
These were really, this one and my second son's, the second one especially, I didn't know where they're putting because it's a little bit confusing, but they were written,
So let's turn to that next one.
Okay.
And that's the, I believe, it is a letter from Andy. And you said you weren't sure whether or not you should put it in. Why?
well, what I meant to say was, like at the beginning, it says, "I'm deeply saddened to write this letter." This letter wasn't written as a recommendation for the board. This was written to the probation officer. So it was, I thought it was kind of confusing, except it does show how much he cares and wants me to succeed and how much we get along. So I put it in.
All right, fair enough. The next letter is January 29, 2008, letter from Ms. Caminero.
Right,
So it's a copy of the one we already have.
right.
Okay. And then we have another one that was written in 2006 by Janet Shippers,
Skippers, She's a friend.
Schippers.
Right. Yeah.
And she wrote you this letter in 2006.
Okay. She was a good friend. Her boy and my boy were very good friends, so we did a lot together.
Very good. All right. And then you sent me a second copy of all those letters again.
Well, I just wanted to make sure you had them.
I do, and now the board does too. So I wanted to ask you this, other than the letters from your boys, why didn't you go back to at least these people or new people to obtain additional letters in support of your application now, 10 years later?
Well, I just thought they would write the same thing. I hadn't been with them working. That was what my thinking was. And the only person that I was with were my parents. So, I mean, I could have had I thought my kids could, that's why I put them in, but I didn't ask my brothers and sisters. I brought them, but
I understand. Do you work right now? What do you do right now?
I have 3 2-year-olds that I babysit with care.com that I'm telling you, I'm exhausted by the end of the day. They're darling, and my other gig is I work for a staffing company that in the desert, they have a lot of casinos and they have a lot of shows. So we are just older people. We take them down the aisle with the flashlight and find their seat.
Okay.
So those are.
Ushers.
Ushers, that's the word I was looking for, yeah. So,
During your interview with Jesse, the investigator from DOI, you mentioned that you've had contact with potential employers in the speech-language pathology area. Can you talk a little bit about those?
well, I think they're friends of friends that, they know the area I want to go to. I hear from them all the time. My response, and I talk to them, I say, I do not have a license. I can't work right now, but I'm working on it. And please let us know. And so I let them know when I'm going, and then if it gets canceled, I let them know again. Because I think it's good to have keep in touch with people that are interested.
And they seem rather fond of you,
Yeah.
these people. They want to
Yeah.
offer you these jobs.
Right.
Why not ask them for letters of recommendation?
Well, I've never really met them. I've just talked to them on the phone.
I see.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't even think about it.
Okay. Or the parents of the children you babysit.
It just started about a month ago, so I can do that if you want. Maybe it's too late.
Well, I think it was incumbent on you to do that with your petition in order to carry your burden of proof. I'm just thinking about what would be the reason not to do that.
Well, because my parents died in, 16 and 17, and we ended up selling the house, and that was a huge job of 40 years of collecting. My mom was a collector. So we did that. I had to move it into another place myself. We had to put it up for sale, and I was doing that. So I really didn't have time to work. And so this has really just been in the last, month or two, I decided to do some little jobs.
All right. So far, we've gotten to the point of your 2008 application for a reinstatement. But then, before your 2008 application could be heard, you were arrested for another DUI in 2008. Is that correct?
Right.
And what happened with that?
Well, it was the 15th, I can remember it. It was right before Christmas. It was the hometown buffet's Christmas party. So I had all those things in, and I had been, the interviewing of the last interviewers was brutal. All I can say. It was very intense, and it was, so I felt intrusive. They went to my employers and said, not, does she have a problem, but it was more, does she walk funny when she comes in and falls down? And my boss said, I don't know what you're talking about. And he said, what did you do? So, it was a horrible experience, to be honest with you.
And because of that horrible experience, you drank and drove.
Well, that's what happens. I was upset. I had a lot on my plate with that party, and I just, that's about how it goes, yeah.
And so because of that arrest and conviction, the board was faced with a dilemma, and that dilemma is represented behind tab 16, where they're talking about, in that email, and you weren't involved in this email exchange, but the board was thinking that, goodness, you could be in jail at the time of the hearing you were
Right.
trying to set up.
Right.
So as a result of that arrest and conviction, and it didn't look, would you agree that it didn't look good as far as rehabilitation posture goes?
You mean to continue with the?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
So you withdrew the...
I did. I talked to the enforcer at the time, and I think it was the district attorney that was on the conference call, and I said I need to pull out, and what do I do? And she said, you write a letter to withdraw, and we'll take it from there. Was about,
And that was in 2008.
right.
Mr. Shalkovich, I'm going to pause right here and ask you for a time estimate in terms of how much longer you intend to cross-examine.
Half an hour.
Half an hour? Okay, so what I'm going to do is stop right here and give our court reporter her break, morning break. So I have the time as 10:17 on my clock. So let's just go to break until 10:35, okay?
Okay.
Of course. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. In the matter of the petition for reinstatement of Mary Sinclair, Mr. Shalkovich, you may resume your cross-examination.
All right, thank you. Ms. Sinclair, I'm sorry, Ms. Sinclair, before we took a break, we were talking about how your 2008 reinstatement petition process was withdrawn.
Right.
And then for the next couple of years, what did you do before you found the cancer treatment center? Or, I'm sorry, the stroke treatment center?
Now, tell
Between
me,
2008 and 2010?
I went to prison for a year.
Apologize, I didn't hear.
Oh,
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Me? I went to prison, I said. Yeah,
so they sent you back for a year?
right. And I came out in 2010, and I paroled to the desert.
Okay. And that is the time when you found the stroke treatment center?
Right.
Okay. Now, on May 18th, 2011, you had another DUI arrest.
They charged me with that,
That is the last one.
Yeah,
That is the last arrest.
right,
Was that also the last time you drank?
yes.
Okay. Now, the arrest report we have is behind tab 6. And, you know, the body of it, the more important part of it that I want to talk to you about is on page 64.
These guys.
Okay, okay, sure.
Now, before we get into what happened that day, I just wanted to make sure that we understand that that case led you to be referred to a mental health court.
Right.
Is that correct? Can you please tell us what that is? What is mental health court?
Well, it's run by, it's in a courtroom, obviously. The lawyer is also a recovering alcoholic and bipolar. The man that runs the program is also. But it really, they have us go to this one group called NAMI, which was another kind of a support group for mental health. I met with the probation officer often. It was like every 2 weeks for a while, so that was part of it. You know, there wasn't actually any kind of lectures or any of that kind of thing, but in the group sessions, that was sort of a talking kind of.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
But I'm actually asking you about the court itself, where
Okay.
the judge was, and
The mental health?
the mental health court.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
They did, was it just a regular courtroom?
right, mhm.
That-
And it
is?
was just called mental health, and everyone in there had something to do with that.
Okay, and they have a program.
Right.
Where they refer you for mental health treatment.
Right, kind of. It wasn't so much treatment. It was a lot of work with the probation officer. I had several of them. I went through 4 of them, but yeah, and they talked about it and, you know, and the one who ran it was in my 7 a.m. meeting, so I talked to him a lot.
Okay, and in order to be a part of this mental health program, they made you basically plead guilty.
Right.
Is that correct?
Right,
To a DUI.
right.
And because of that, in light of the fact that you were in this mental health program, instead of sending you back to prison, this time it was a probation
Right.
order. That's
And
right.
if anything went wrong, you were on your way.
So a pretty short leash.
Very.
Right. And the length of that probation was 36 months, is that right? Okay. And those probation term had conditions, right? And one of those was a requirement that you participate in a mental health program. Is that right?
Ms. Sinclair, let me just remind you,
Oh, yes.
please,
I'm
instead of
sorry.
saying,
Okay.
please verbalize the
I'm
answer.
sorry. Yeah.
Most of us know exactly what you mean.
No,
but,
I
But
understand.
reading it, it will be hard to tell.
Okay, I
So
gotcha.
If it's a yes,
Yes.
then it's a
Okay.
yes. Thank you. All right. And that program consisted of NAMI, like you mentioned
Right.
before,
Right.
and also,
Yes, I'm sorry.
well, right, is
Yes.
fair. Okay. And then also, you had to see Dr. Hannah.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And isn't it true that at the time when you were sentenced to be treated by Dr. Hannah, you were already treating with her by
Yes.
then? Okay. And you started seeing her in July of 2010. Is that about
Yes.
right? Okay. And when you started to see Dr. Hannah in 2010, you were already participating in the AA.
Yes.
But that was before your arrest in May of 2011. So you were in AA
Yes.
and seeing Dr. Hannah.
Yes.
And then this 2011 relapse happened.
Yeah.
What brought it about? Do you remember?
Well, yeah, I had been drinking the night before. I went to the meeting and I had someone take me there. And they left me in the car and I said I would stay there. So I did not drive. That's why I fought it for so long. There was no driving. Nobody saw me driving. I don't think I could have driven. So that was it. And I fought it and I said, then we'll go to trial. I was really stubborn about it because I did what I thought it was supposed to do. And finally they gave it to me.
Okay. You said that on the day of your arrest, now we're looking at this page 64 that describes your interaction with the policeman. You went to your AA meeting
Before.
before the arrest.
Yes.
I'm also going to give an instruction to the audience member. Please do not help the witness along. Do not suggest answers. We should remain quiet for all the audience members that are. If there is an issue with her responses, I will give a reminder. But this is a good time for me to pause for a little bit, Mr. Shalkovich. Just to clarify my earlier prior ruling regarding the admissibility of these documents, any police reports will be subject to Lake versus Reed.
Yes, of course. And we're talking about, with regard to Lake versus Reed, the admissibility of statements made by the witness in this case is
Right.
admissible.
Okay, so Ms. Sinclair, what I'm going to do is just briefly explain to you what that means.
Okay.
So Lake versus Reed is a California Supreme Court case. It simply states that police reports in these type of administrative hearings are admissible, but they're only admissible to the extent that there any observations made by the arresting officer, any party admissions made by you directly will be admissible as direct evidence. Any statements made by third parties are only admissible to the extent that they supplement or explain direct evidence. So it just simply places a limit on the admissibility of third-party statements. Okay? All right.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Shalkovich.
And Ms. Sinclair, you had a chance to read this report before, is that true?
Yes.
Right. And this report here includes only your statements and the officer's observations. Would you agree with that? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now, one thing that I wanted to make sure I understand, this arrest occurred after an AA meeting.
Yes.
Did the people in your meeting know that you were intoxicated at the time?
No, but the person I asked to take me, I told her, and I needed a ride.
And where is it that she took you?
To the stroke center.
What were you going to do at the stroke center?
I was going to sit and wait until I felt better, and if not, I would wait. I would go back. I'd call back. That was what my plan was, because I hadn't called in, and that's how I am. But that's what my plan was. I was going to just wait,
Why not ask her to take you home?
because I hadn't called them and told them I wasn't going to come. And when I say I'm going to do something, I want to do it, but I'm not going to do it under the influence, so I was waiting.
And how long do you think it would have taken you?
I don't know.
Wouldn't that be the same as not coming in?
Well, I don't know. I was hoping I'd feel better after, a little bit.
But you see how this looks. You were intoxicated, and instead of asking to be taken home, you asked to be taken to work.
Well, and I was not going in until I wasn't intoxicated. That's what I'm trying to say to you.
Fair enough. Okay. And I was wondering if you had a chance to look through Dr. Hanna's records, because you released those to the board. And, Your Honor, I would like to make a motion to seal Exhibit 23 after we discuss with it, because it is Dr. Hanna's treatment records of Ms. Sinclair.
So, motion to seal Exhibit 23 is granted. So, Ms. Sinclair, what that means is that when I'm preparing the decision in this case, this exhibit will be taken out, and it's
Okay.
going to be placed under a sealed envelope, and I will have a protective order on this particular document.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Okay. Ms. Sinclair, I want to ask you, basically, to turn to page 183. Now, I don't believe that you would necessarily be able to recognize what this document is, but I was wondering, have you ever seen this before?
Her notes?
Her notes?
No.
Okay, well, let's look at the top here and see. It says that the date of this note is June 2nd, 2011. So this is less than 4 weeks after your arrest, is that correct?
I guess, uh-huh.
Okay,
Yes.
now, in this note, I know her handwriting is kind of hard to decipher, but having worked with doctors, I have an excellent experience doing that. So I'm
Yeah.
going to read that paragraph that she wrote on top, and see if you can follow along, and let's see if you would agree with what I think it says. Okay? It says, I believe, she has continued relapsing with ETOH. That's alcohol. Second line, she is now willing to start anti-abuse. Do you remember having that discussion?
I did have a discussion with her. She was wondering how hard it was.
Okay. It says here, last drank for 2 weeks ago.
Well,
Mother is willing to dispense it to her.
it was May 18th, so, and yes, I do remember the conversation.
Okay, good. And you remember your mother was willing to dispense that to you? Okay. We discussed SE, which stands for side effects, right, and benefits. And then the last sentence. Once she took Seroquel in the morning and drove the car to work, then sat in the car and fell asleep and was cited for DUI.
Yeah. Well, I drove in the car. That the policeman asked me the same question. Did you drive? No, he said, did you go from home to here in this car? And I said, yes, because that's who, I was in the car. I didn't even think about it, but I didn't drive it. That's not true.
So you think that this note made by your doctor, by the way, did I read it? Do you think I read it fairly? Is that what it says?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I guess that's what it says, but I drove to work. I didn't fly, but I didn't drive. That's what I'm trying to say.
All right. Now, before we took this detour about whether or not you drove that day, the policeman also put in his report that you drove that day.
I know.
Did the policeman not tell the truth in his report?
No, he saw the chaparral where my parents live, and he said, did you come from here? And I said, yes. And that meant, but I was in the car, but I didn't say I drove there. I told him that several times afterwards when I read it. It's just I came from there. That's what all that was. It was a...
Okay. So we looked at the fact that you were coming from an AA meeting, and I just wanted to show you Exhibit 7. You submitted records of your attendance at AA meetings. Now, I know, and you know, and I want you to let the board know about whether or not these are complete records of your attendance at AA
No.
meetings.
Yeah, I go all the time, and I go 7 days a week, and at mental health, I was needing 3. So there were times when I didn't go. There were times when I left my slip in the basket. There were lots of times.
Okay, so, I mean, these records talk about AA meetings during 2013 and 2014 and 2017.
Right.
But your testimony is that you attend regularly and for much more extensively than that. Is that
Oh,
true?
yeah. This was court ordered, and this was the stroke center wanted me to, thought they were helping.
Right. And looking at Exhibit 22, behind tab 22, and I'm sorry to make you flip all over the place, but that is the letter from your current AA sponsor, is
Right.
that correct?
Yes.
Okay. But as far as attending AA, that was ordered by the court as a result of your convictions, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, but I was going anyway. That's,
Okay.
yeah.
So from your petition, we have a sense that you've attended AA meetings more consistently. Is there a reason why you didn't include records of attendance that are more extensive in your petition?
No, I just don't have them. I didn't have them signed because I wasn't ordered to. I mean, I go, and there was
Fair.
no
Okay.
need for a,
Fair enough.
okay.
Now, the thing is, the AA meetings were ordered as a part of your probation in mental health court, weren't they?
I believe so, yeah.
In fact, if we look at page 40, which is behind tab 5. This is a sentencing minute order. And if you look at item number 15, Page 40.
44?
40.
40, okay.
It's behind tab 5.
Aren't I in there? Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
44?
No, 40. Just page 40. Okay, and if you look at item 15 here, you were supposed to attend 5 weekly AA meetings.
Well, that's how it
That's
starts.
correct?
Yeah, it
Okay.
starts, and if you do well and you continue to show that you're going, they can put them down. But I'm used to it. That's how I
But
do.
you were already going.
Yeah,
Okay, that's what
Yes.
I wanted to point out. And as far as obtaining mental health help from Dr. Hannah, you were required to do by this order. You were doing that already too?
right.
Okay. Now, in your personal statement that accompanied your petition, you said that the mental health court was enlightening.
It was.
Can you explain, please, how your treatment with Dr. Hannah, attending AA, attending the driver program, all of these things that mental health court required you to do, how was it enlightening?
Well, it all started to come together. That's all I can say. And I started to buy into everything. I mean, I was done, is what I didn't want to go anymore to the courthouse again. I didn't want to do anything. So I put my head down and I did everything I was supposed to do. And when I didn't really believe that I had a diagnosis of mental illness, but I do. And there's nothing else I can do about it. I have to just work on it.
Okay, you don't have to tell them, but what is that diagnosis? If you would like
No.
to let them know, go
It's
ahead.
bipolar. Yeah, bipolar disorder and alcoholism is the dual diagnosis.
Okay. Now, isn't it true that one of the probationary conditions included completely abstaining from alcohol?
Yes,
And so you were required by the court not to drink at all? And if you did, you'd have to go back to jail.
right. And I also had an ankle monitor for 120 days at the beginning.
Right. And you were also required to complete 600 hours of community service. And since you were already working at the stroke center, you just continued to do that.
Right. They're a part of the alternate sentencing. There's a list, and they were on it, and I thought, well, that makes sense.
Okay, I wanted to talk about the alcohol rehabilitation programs that you participated in. You said you participated in those, in your interview anyway, you said on at least 3 occasions, and you
Right.
mentioned them. The first one was Helena program,
St. Helena,
right?
yes.
And when did you graduate from there, approximately?
Oh, yeah, in the 90s, late 90s, I'd say.
Okay, and were you required to attend St. Helena because of a DUI case?
No, not on that one,
How did you choose to attend St. Helena?
because I knew I had a problem, my family knew I had a problem, and they wanted me to get help.
Okay, and you said the 90s, is there approximately, was this before any convictions?
Yes. it
Because the
was
first one was in 92.
Yeah, but there was no condition to go to a program at all, and that one, as well as the Betty Ford Center.
Okay. So then there was another rehab program at Betty Ford? And you completed that as well?
Yes.
And when was that?
I want to say 2004 or something, something like that.
And you're saying that was not ordered because of a DUI case?
Right.
Now, isn't it true that making a showing to the court that you're attending these programs would tend to lessen your sentence in a DUI case?
that was not what I was doing. I mean, I never went back to court. I got ordered and told what to do, and later on I decided to go. So I didn't have a chance to go back to show a judge or anything. But I mean, in the future, like here, I bring it up because it is something that I directed myself and I wanted it.
And the last one you mentioned was New Directions in Stockton. That was
Yes.
because of the DUI case.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, the one last thing that I want to talk to you about is that citation that was issued by the board after, because after you submitted your latest application, the one that's pending today,
Yes?
there was a whole other investigation that got started. Is that yes?
Yes.
Yes. And as a result of that investigation, you were issued a citation.
Yes.
Let's look at tab 25 and see what it is. The one thing that I want to clarify with you is that this was issued because of the work you had at the Stroke Care Center. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And it was for 7 years.
Yes.
And when did you stop working there?
Was it Christmas of 16, I think? About at that time. I believe so.
You started in 2010,
Yeah.
and then you worked there for 7 years. So it wasn't.
Maybe it wasn't 7 years. I get those certificates. I thought I had a 7. I believe it was, I'm trying to think. I can't really remember the date. I don't recall.
Was the end of your work at the Stroke Center, did it correspond with your completion of the mental health requirements
No,
from the court?
no.
You continued to work there?
Yes.
Did it correspond with your application for reinstatement when the board started to look at the situation of your work there?
That I stopped or I,
Did you, let me rephrase.
Okay,
that.
I'm
That
sorry.
was messy. Did they, did they ask you to stop, or did you just quit?
I did not come for 3 times because I was supposed to cover, but I was in the middle of doing all this house stuff and I was swamped. I had Thanksgiving, Christmas, and no help. Nobody was around. So she called and said that it was time to end it. And there was a wording.
Okay.
Yeah, it was no longer needed or whatever, and I was really quite pleased because I was getting overwhelmed.
And did that have anything to do with the fact that you filed a petition for reinstatement of your license and the board started asking questions
No.
about the nature of your work?
That had nothing to do with it.
Okay.
I didn't know what was wrong. That's what, I thought I didn't understand that I was, I thought I was volunteering. That's what I thought.
As far as you know, did anybody from the Stroke Care Center, did you approach any of them to write you a letter of recommendation for this proceeding?
For this?
Yes.
No.
Why not?
Well, I thought I was finished. I had put in a lot of time there, and I was busy with my family, getting things together and moved out, and I thought this is probably a good break. There is one from somebody I worked with, it's somewhere in here, it was a recommendation. But I didn't ask from the, because she didn't know what I was doing, really. She never came in, and so
During your interview with Jesse, he asked you, if I contacted them and asked them if you were drinking, what will they say? Do you remember what
No.
your answer to that was? You said, yeah, does it sound to you like you might have said, yeah, they would say that there was something wrong with me?
well, they
because-
knew on the as I told Jesse, on that DUI that I received when I was out in the parked car. So that's when they started making me go to AA meetings, which was funny because I was going anyway. And so then I was starting on the medication, and I was dizzy on a few occasions. And I was not going to bring up mental health to the group there was a lot of, talking behind backs, and I just didn't want to deal with it.
Bear with me for a second here. All right. It's okay. I want to direct your attention specifically to the aggravating factor that's listed in this citation. And that is on page 301.
Yes,
It's the fourth paragraph down.
yes.
It says, during another investigative interview on April 26, 2018, you stated you were providing speech-language pathology therapy to mostly elderly individuals between ages of 50 and 90 who suffered from strokes. And then it says, you further confirmed that during the office mediation that you were providing speech therapy services without a license, and that NVC hired a licensed speech-language pathologist for the purpose of billing the therapy services that you were providing.
Well, as I told you before, that was really a rumor. They had her come in because they were going to do the Neurovitality Center. They were doing the MS, the Parkinson's, and she was able to bill that. But then they were saying, I heard them saying that she could oversee all of us. But as I told you, that would never happen in my place, in my room, because I wouldn't do it. But I don't think they ever did it. I don't think, but that was a rumor, it really is what it was.
So as far as you're aware, NVC never actually billed anyone for the work you did, is that true?
Oh, no. I know that's true.
Okay. When you heard that rumor, did you do anything? Did you say anything to them about
In my head, I said, not in my room, you're gonna do that. I mean, I don't have a license, you cannot bill my name. So that's just what I said, and that's how I felt, and so I didn't really need to say anything to anybody. I knew what I would do. I wouldn't ever do that.
But you did not have a reason to do that because they never did it?
Well, nobody ever came and asked me or came in and sat and looked, and I had to say, why are you doing that, or nothing like that. So I don't think it really happened. I know they tried to bill the other two, but it wasn't successful, so.
Okay, the other two, you mean? the
Parkinson's and-
Parkinson's and
MS.
MS, patients who were eligible for reimbursement,
Right.
but it didn't work.
They didn't keep coming. It really didn't stick.
And you paid the citation?
Yes, I did.
All right, that's all the questions I have,
Okay.
and I'll turn it over to Your Honor. And if the board members have any questions, I'm sure.
All right, so I will, this is the portion where the board can ask questions of the petitioner. And what I will do is go around the table, starting with Dr. Diaz, and then if you could, first of all, identify yourself on the record as who you are, and then pose a question. Thank you.
Rodney Diaz, otolaryngologist and public board member. Thank you very much for recounting so much detail to your testimony. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it. Do you remember who the person was, the name of your friend that drove you on May 2011?
She was a member of AA.
Do you remember who she was, and were you able to get a letter or testimony? Or
No,
would she
because
be
she
able to-
never came back.
Ms. Sinclair, this is for the purpose of making sure that we have a very clear record. Wait until the member has
Okay.
completed the question, and then you may answer. Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Diaz.
Yeah,
Dr. Diaz.
The reason I'm asking is it just seems like that's really kind of a crux to a lot of the questions here, is just trying to identify what exactly happened on that day, and trying to really establish that you didn't drive, that your friend drove, and if we could just maybe get some clarification that it really was your friend that drove, and if we could maybe find out from her or get some sort of statement to corroborate that it really was your friend that drove, and she could state that it was her, it would probably alleviate a lot of our concerns to get some sort of statement or to have her come. I think that might have helped us out a lot, so.
Well, first of all, she came from AA, and I'm not supposed to give anybody's name out there, but she no longer comes anymore either. So I know sort of where she lives, and I know somebody who knows. I could ask if you wanted, but I don't see her every morning anymore.
Christy Cooper, audiologist board member. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Karen Chang, public member. First, I want to congratulate you on your 8 years of sobriety. That's definitely
Thank you.
Probably a great thing, and
Thank you very
please
much.
continue. Do you have a driver's license? Are you allowed to drive right now?
Yes.
Okay. And at the stroke center, were you ever, you said you were a volunteer, but were you ever paid? I don't understand
No.
the billing.
Never paid.
You were never paid, so you were a volunteer
Right.
at the stroke center. Okay. If you were to get reinstated with the license, and you said you plan on being near your sons because of your grandchildren, how is that going to affect you when you already have like this community in AA at Desert?
Well, you know, I was thinking about that this morning when I was in the shower, and I thought, you know, I say I'm going to go to a new town, but you immediately go into an AA meeting and they're all your friends in the first moment. And I mean, really, it's easy to get to know people that way. And I find that way in churches. I go to a church, and within, 2 or 3 times, people are really ready to reach out. It's a really unique group. Of course, I would keep in contact with all of my people here, but, and there's so many meetings. I mean, you don't have to go to just one. There's women's meetings, and there's ones in the evening, and there's speaker meetings, and, you really can mix it up and meet a whole lot of people. But
And if you were to get your license, who would you what group would you serve or try to get into?
Oh, as far as like the school population?
The schools, the elderly?
Well, that's a good question. That's another thing I've been thinking about. I like all of them, but the ones I've been contacted with are mostly rehab with older people, but that doesn't mean that I would not think about something else. And I really can't answer that, because I probably look around and see which one I liked, and it wouldn't matter if they were old or young.
And then you mentioned that, like in the beginning, your drinking was caused by like a stress triggers, right? Has there been any time where being a speech pathologist triggered any stress for you?
Not really. I find it's really who I am. I find comfort in being with them, being in it. I know that, I can remember in the schools, I think I had 86, caseload of 86, and twice a week for 20 minutes, and I was running. I'm not sure at this age I'd be doing that as well as I did then, but that was a little bit stressful with all the meetings and the paperwork. So I found the older population was less, so many and at one time, and that's what I have found, but I wouldn't rule any of them out.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Marcia Reggio. I just have one question. I'm not exactly know where to address it. You did this community service, I believe, at the Stroke Center, which became the Neuro Vitality.
Right.
Okay, and were found that to be practicing without a license. Does that negate this community service if there's something untoward about those hours that she spent there? And that's why I'm not sure who to ask,
This
actually.
is a question for, I think that that is a matter of argument, and I intend to talk about that during the closing statement.
Yes, I was going
okay.
to direct that Mr. Shelkovich address that issue during closing argument.
Okay, thank you.
Dee Parker, speech language pathologist.
Okay.
And if your license is reinstated, are you prepared to step into a job that is now in 2019 and all that has occurred in
Yes.
between?
That's a very good question.
Ms. Sinclair, you need to wait
Oh,
till the
okay.
end of the question and then respond. It's for the clarity of the record. If somebody jumps in, then we don't know what the complete question is. Sorry, Ms. Sinclair, you need to wait till the end of the question. Go ahead.
And part of
Dr.
that would
Parker.
be, how would you address that issue? Have you attended CASHA? Have you kept up your CEUs, continuing education units, excuse me, and are prepared to move into a caseload of maybe 100 to 120 in the
That's that.
schools now? It's gone up.
I don't know about that, but I have been reading up. I didn't know if a part of it would be taking a test. So I've been reading, and there is new material, you're right. I have flashcards, and I'm thinking, I gotta look this word up in the dictionary. So there are things that I would need to catch up on. I agree with you. But I've started by trying to study and learn as much as I could.
So you have the documentation. You've actually been doing the continuing ed units and
No, just as far as taking the test to get your Cs back or whatever, isn't there a large test? And they have books on them now. So they give you like a description of something and they say what you would do in therapy. So you learn as you read, but I needed to have one of those.
okay. For the audience, the Cs
Yeah.
is something that we use as an acronym, and that's the Certificate of Clinical Competence that is issued by the American Speech, Language, and Hearing Association and is pretty much the gold standard for our profession.
Thank you.
I think she's saying she has to retake the practice.
Yeah, she has to redo the praxis.
Right. That's the word they called it, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
My name is Amnon Shalev. I have a few questions. First of all, you mentioned that the center hired a speech pathology. When you said hired, what do you mean? Is she going to be their employee and they pay her salary?
Yes.
But in another time, you said that she billed for your time. So our rumors said
Yeah, right.
that she billed. So is she was doing the billing or the center was doing the billing?
Well, I'm sure it would come through the center, and because they do all the billing. So she's an employee.
So
but-
she received a monthly salary
Yes.
and they were billing.
It didn't happen. It was just, so I don't know if it was a rumor or it was in the plan, but in the, I don't know, 10 months I stayed until the end, it never happened. Nobody asked me ever to do that, so,
No, but it can
You
be.
couldn't.
They could bill without your knowledge.
oh, that would be a
Could-
big deal, yeah.
Right. How many hours a day were you in the center?
Oh, it was like 5.5, 6, something like that.
6 hours every day?
Not every day. I started at 3, and then as my parents needed more help, it
Yeah.
went down, and then I came back at 2, and so, but I started at 3, and no, I didn't go every day.
Now, but how many hours a week, you said, approximately?
15, 18, something like
Hours,
that.
hours a week for like 7 years?
Yeah.
Now, you lost your license in 2005.
Yes.
Now, what was your source of income until today, from 2005, all these years?
Well, I used a lot of my retirement, is what I did. I think I said that in my narrative. I saved when I stayed with my parents
Yeah.
and helped in that way. But that's another issue why I need to get back to work, because I need to have something when I
Yeah.
get to the end.
But you didn't receive a penny either from the center or from
No.
the other? Now, you know what's her name?
The
The other, the physical therapist
physical therapist or the
that work, that they hired. They hire a physical therapist. Do you know her name?
I don't know if they hired a speech therapist. But,
Speech therapist,
Uh-huh.
sorry, not physical, speech therapist, I'm sorry. They hire speech, and you know her name?
I
You
do.
work together, right?
Yes. I mean, I saw her a lot, yeah.
And you know her name?
I can't think of it right now. I'm having trouble retrieving words lately.
Did you have a good relationship with her?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Did you try to get from her recommendation?
Well, I could have. I could have. I just, I didn't know if that was what was necessary. I thought I had one. I really didn't think of it as work. I thought it was a volunteer. So I have one from a client that I worked with that's in these paperwork somewhere. But she just said, if you're leaving, I want to give this to you. But
Yeah. Now, regarding your DUI, in May of 2011,
May
there was,
11th. Yep.
there was an incident in which you were in the parking lot and you've been approached by the policeman.
Right.
And according to his report, he said that you told him that you were
Right.
driving. But you claimed that somebody else was driving
Right.
you, so you were a passenger at
Yes.
that car. But he found you in the driving seat.
well, she left to go
Why?
home.
So, but there was no, why did you move from whatever you were?
Oh, I don't know.
Sleeping, you moved to the driver's seat.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't even know why I did that then.
Now, so they took samples and they found out that it was under DUI, whether it was medication or alcohol,
Uh-huh.
it was DUI, and they suspend your license.
Yes, this is an
Right, and
interesting.
did you contest it?
Well, on the suspension?
Yes.
Yes, I did.
In May of 2011.
Okay, this is how it went. This was just a crazy whole thing. So he got it, he took me to the office, gave the blood and all that, and I had a court date. And when I went to the court date.
When
it-
was the court, approximately?
Oh, just probably 3 or 4 days afterwards.
Okay.
And when I went there, I wasn't up on the board, and it said, I asked the lady, and she said, it's been dropped because there's not enough evidence. And so I thought, that's great. I'm done, and I don't have and so, but before that, I had written the DMV, and I said, I want to stay on my license, and I want to come in front of you because I wasn't driving. And they gave it to me. So after I went to court, and they said, no, it's nothing, the DA picked it up. And she said, you go after that girl who's driving that car. So he pulled me over, and I said, I have a stay on this license. And he said, well, I looked at it, and he said, nope, there's something wrong with this, but no, you don't. And I said, I really do. I have one more day. And so anyway, he towed my car again for another $1,000.
This was a month later, in June of 2011.
This was, yes, exactly.
June of 2011, they found you driving with a suspended license.
But I had written to the DMV, and they gave me a stay, meaning I could drive until I went to that meeting, that I was going to tell them about it, and then they could decide.
Okay, so there was a meeting, so you.
I didn't ever get there,
Why?
because
There was no trial or hearing or anything about your license that you want to contest to say somebody else was driving, the whole thing was wrong?
I told the court that,
Oh,
yeah.
there was court. When was the court hearing?
Oh, right after. I mean, but I went to court for a year and a half on this.
No, I'm talking about, there was a court about the May 2011 incident?
Yes.
And this was when?
The court.
Yes, about,
I had a court date from that point for a year and a half. I went to court every 2 weeks, pleading my case that I wasn't.
in order to get your license back?
In order to clear it, yes.
Yes.
Let me just, I think there may be
Yeah.
some confusion. There is a criminal case involving the DUI stemming
Yeah.
from the May 2011 incident. And then
No.
you're maybe talking about the DMV administrative case? There's a separate DMV administrative case.
Either one of the cases, I'll tell you,
Okay.
either one of the cases, whether the criminal case or administrative, you were trying to get your license back, right?
I wanted to stay so I could go have a hearing, right?
Yes, you're trying.
I tried.
In each one of these hearings, whether administrative or criminal, did you brought your friend, the driver at that time, or a letter from your friend to show as an evidence that you were not
No.
driving?
No.
Why?
I didn't even think about it. It was the truth. I don't know. I didn't.
Did one of the officers in the hearing have ever asked you, who is your friend that was driving you?
Later on, they did, and I said
No.
she was no longer at AA, and I don't know where she is. So that's how it went. But then I had to go back to court, I had to stay, so then that went off, and I had to pick my car. It was, just went on and on. That's why I sort of said no more.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Okay. I'm Debbie Snow, public member. I did want to say I really admire all your effort and your honesty in talking about your dual diagnosis. I know that can be hard to
Thank
talk
you.
about, and it sounds like you've worked really hard.
Thank you.
I did have a couple questions. If you are able to move, you talked about finding an AA and about jobs. You would also need to find a new psychiatrist to continue your
That's true.
medication. I just was
That-
curious if your current psychiatrist could get you a
That's a good
referral,
idea.
or you would,
Right.
because as you know, it's important to keep up with
Right.
the
Excellent
medication
idea.
as well.
Thank you.
So you haven't yet, but.
Yeah.
But,
That's a
okay.
good thing to remember.
And I'm sorry we keep going back to this, but I am really confused in the citation about practicing without a license. The aggravating factor, you said it's from a rumor, but it says you told the office mediation that you were providing it and that the NVC had hired a speech-language pathologist. So you're not saying it's a rumor in here, so I'm just, can you help me
I don't think it was
understand?
about the billing. I think it was about, I was providing the group sessions, is what I think that's what I meant to say. I don't know.
Okay.
But it didn't happen. It really didn't happen.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right, thank you.
thank you.
That concludes the examination by the board. So at this time, I will take closing argument from both sides.
Your Honor, the petitioner's brother approached me during the break, said that he wanted to make a statement to the board. I believe Ms. Sinclair was intending to call him as a witness. in this
Okay,
matter as well.
so you want to, Ms.
Sure,
Sinclair, you want
that
to
would
call
be
your
great.
brother as a character witness?
Yes.
All right, okay. Can you tell me what your name is?
Yes. My name's Steve Sinclair, and I'm Mary's little brother, which
Okay.
is a strange title for a 57-year-old
All right,
man.
hold on, Mr. Sinclair.
Can we get him near a microphone?
Oh,
What I will have him do is, you need to sit next to Ms. Sinclair. All right. So as a character witness, Mr. Sinclair, I need to swear you in, and then at that point, you may make a statement, but you will also be subject to cross-examination by Mr. Shalkovich. Okay? All right. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, please be seated. Please state your full name for the record and spell your name.
My full name is Stephen Sinclair, and I'm my sister's little brother. I just wanted to come before you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Sinclair, you need to spell your name for the record, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's-
Sinclair.
And is that Stephen with a PH or with the V?
Steven.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Sinclair.
Okay, well, good morning. I just wanted to come before you and thank you for your professionalism. It's been a long road for my sister Mary, and she's committed now to a healthy lifestyle, and I want you to know she has family that supports her, including me, and she was at one time an excellent speech pathologist, and I think in her dream she just wants to go back and for another 5 to 7 years and do the things she loved most. And she has family, her sons, and my family as well as my sister and brother to support her, and we will. But thank you for giving her a chance today. I appreciate it. That's all I have.
All right. Thank you very, very much, Mr. Sinclair.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So, Ms. Sinclair, you may resume at your seat. And I'm going to take closing argument from both sides. And in this case, because you bear the burden of proof, what I'm going to do is allow you to give your closing argument first, and then it's going to be Mr. Shalkovich, and then you will be given an opportunity to provide a rebuttal. Okay?
Is it an argument?
Yes.
Or just a conclusion? If you don't have
Well, it is a closing argument. What it is a final opportunity for you to make an argument about why the case should be decided in your favor.
Okay.
So it is not, I cannot take any new evidence. If you try to attempt to bring forth any evidence, that's going to be an objection that will be sustained. But again, it is just a way for you to tie up the loose ends and make an argument.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead,
Okay.
Ms. Sinclair.
Well, Steve said it. It's a career that I loved, and I would just give the world to finish on a good note. I'm not actually proud of the 8 years, but I am so grateful that I have them. I didn't know if that was going to be possible, and it is, and I'm thrilled about that. I feel confident that I'm capable of getting back in the workforce. I think, the illness is not, like I said, curable, but it is treatable. And if I continue to go to my AA meetings and take it very seriously, and if I continue to do my mental health medication, and I keep my mind straight, and I keep exercising and eat right and do all the good stuff, I really think I could return to being a good speech therapist. And I appreciate you listening to me, and I appreciate it having a chance. Thank you.
Mr. Shalkovich.
All right. Well, the board is a part of the Department of Consumer Affairs, and your mission is public protection by appropriately licensing and disciplining professionals whose practice falls under your jurisdiction. We have to think about the significance of what that means, public protection. By issuing a license, the board doesn't just say to the public, yes, this individual has her certificates and she is technically competent in a technical sense to deliver the care and treatment to her patients. Obviously, that is something that the board has to do and make sure of before giving somebody a license. But that isn't the only thing that the board says to the public by giving someone a license. It also means, yeah, we checked out this person, and we are willing to stand behind her and tell you that she has the judgment, the character, she has what it takes to practice her profession. She's worthy of trust. Essentially, a license is a government seal of approval. The question before the board, all of you today, is whether Ms. Sinclair has met the burden that she has, the burden to prove that she should be given that seal of approval. As we know from the case Houseman versus Board of Medical Examiners, it's an old medical board case from 1948. It said, basically the rule is that a petitioner must show a stronger proof of honesty and integrity than a new applicant for a license. Showing that a petitioner for a reinstatement has not violated the law or avoided committing outright misconduct after losing her license is not in itself a showing of rehabilitation. There's another case called Mena. It's a little bit newer. It's from 1995. It says California Supreme Court. It's a California Supreme Court case. It was a lawyer's reinstatement petition. And they explained that the burden was on the petitioner to show that her efforts made towards rehabilitation have been successful. The court stated that an alcoholic's rehabilitation is almost universally predicated on a choice to confront his or her problem, followed by abstinence sustained through ongoing participation in a supportive program such as AA. While relevant, character testimony, however laudatory it might be, does not alone establish the requisite rehabilitation. Now, in our case, most of the letters of support that Ms. Sinclair submitted were written for her more than 2 DUI convictions ago. Those convictions demonstrate that these letters could not be conclusive to assure the board that Ms. Sinclair had put her alcohol problem behind her back then. Can these letters be trusted now because they're the evidence that she's presenting? Can these letters be trusted now to carry Ms. Sinclair's burden of proof today? She appears to be a very nice person, and indeed she's brave to be here to tell you her troubles. But I would say that these letters that are more than 10 years old, with the exceptions of the letters provided by her family, that were written before 2 other incidents, or 3 if you count the burning microwave, they're only marginally persuasive. The courts have consistently held that it's not enough that petitioner keep out of trouble while being watched or being on probation or parole, with the possibility of prison hanging over her head, something that she learned in 2006. Keeping out of trouble only shows us that Ms. Sinclair is rational and does not want to get in trouble again. Her burden today is to affirmatively and sincerely demonstrate to you rehabilitation over a prolonged period of time. In the words of the California Supreme Court case Mena, a true indication of rehabilitation will be presented if petitioner can demonstrate by her sustained period of not only unblemished, but exemplary conduct. It takes more than just following the rules to show rehabilitation under these circumstances. Now, in our case, the conduct unfortunately includes 2 additional DUI incidents after Ms. Sinclair's license was revoked. And the most recent one in 2011 is a prime example of why the board has every right to be concerned here. Ms. Sinclair was under the influence when she went to the stroke center, apparently, at some point, to render services to patients, and she was impaired by alcohol at that time. Not to mention, without a license to do even to this day, we have inconsistencies in the story that she recently told the investigator, and then she told us about how she got there, whether her friend drove her there or not. I don't sense that she gets that the most important thing about that incident was not what the police report says or what her doctor's records say, but that she went to work with patients while she was impaired. Now, all of you board members raised more than one a very cogent question, and that question was, if it is so important to establish that she didn't drive from the AA meeting where she was intoxicated to the stroke center to practice her profession for which she wasn't licensed, if she was driven there by her friend, and then there was a big court case where she was contesting whether or not she drove, why is it that that friend isn't before us? Why is it that the letter from that friend isn't before us? Why is it that there was a conviction and a chance to go to the mental health court when that friend could have said she didn't drive? Now, we all realize that that incident was a long time ago, but the inconsistencies about what happened, they're cropping up to this day. And those raise questions about whether Ms. Sinclair is ready to abandon rationalizing what she did and her behavior up until the point of her filing of this petition. So this petition today presents a situation where the rehabilitative efforts were forced on her by courts. Let me explain what I mean. She didn't go out of her way to exhibit exemplary conduct, is what I'm trying to say. It's good to participate in AA, but she was already doing that before her incident in May 2011. And she was there before she was sentenced to go to AA by the court. It is also good that Ms. Sinclair received psychiatric treatment from Dr. Hanna, but again, she was doing that before the arrest in May of 2011 and before being sentenced to go there again. And likewise, it is good that Ms. Sinclair volunteered at the Stroke Recovery Center, but once again, she was doing that before her 2011 arrest. And when she was sentenced to perform community service, she went back to where she was already. Now, Ms. Raggio, you raised a question about whether or not her volunteer services would be nullified by the fact that she was practicing without a license during that. I would say that for the purposes of the criminal court, she was not being paid. And so, in essence, she was volunteering her services. She was providing free services to the public. But in a situation where it is on Ms. Sinclair to show a burden, to meet a burden, to show that she was conducting herself in an exemplary manner, the fact that she was practicing speech-language pathology without a license speaks against her rehabilitation. Exemplary behavior is not ignoring the rules. Exemplary behavior is not practicing without a license. Exemplary behavior does not result in citations by the board and orders to stop what you're doing. So hopefully that explains to you how you should look at that. It doesn't mean that her sentence can be viewed as something that ought to send her back to prison because she did not comply with the court's order to provide free labor. She did. But in a sense of thinking about it from the point of view of rehabilitation, I think it is a difficult fact for Ms. Sinclair's petition. And the issue with following the law, it, like I said, crept up again, and the board issued a citation and fine and ordered Ms. Sinclair to cease and desist from practicing speech-language pathology without a license. Again, that situation is the opposite of exemplary conduct, and again, it is recent. It continued until shortly before her petition started to be investigated. So for these reasons, it doesn't appear that Ms. Sinclair has met the burden laid on her shoulders by this petition. And regretfully, I must ask you to consider very, very carefully giving a license back to someone who hasn't met their burden. If you do decide to do that, I urge you not to simply give it to her. Think about protective conditions. Think about what it will take for you to be able to comfortably put that seal of approval on Ms. Sinclair's ability to practice speech-language pathology. The board has the power to order her to continue undergoing treatment. The board has the power to require her to prove her technical competency, because it has been some time before, since she last has had to complete or prove her continuing education. And the evidence of that has been kind of thin today. But with all of that in mind, I urge you to deny this petition. I don't believe that Ms. Sinclair is ready to stop rationalizing her behavior. I don't believe that she met the burden of proof. And with that, I thank you for your attention.
Okay, so Ms. Sinclair, you may provide a rebuttal. What that is you can respond to Mr. Shalkovich's argument. Go ahead.
Well, I can continue to say the same thing, that I was a volunteer, I didn't receive any money, I thought I was doing a great service, and if you don't believe me, that's the truth. I can't tell you enough. I never knew there was any problem. But I'll tell you, I am in the place now where I really want to go forward. And I'm tired of living in the past, and the past is the past, and I want to go forward. And when I came here, they told me that, in writing the narrative and in the petition, that that we don't want to dwell on the last, whatever has been done is done. Example of the citation, it was paid and it's done. And we want to talk about rehab and going forward. And that's what I dwell on every day. That's where I want to go. And it's my dream to go back. And I've worked hard. And I hope that I get a chance to try again.
All right, thank you very much. Given that, we are adjourned for today.
All right, thank you.
Off the record.